Just waiting for it to show up on
Okay,
Facebook.
no worries.
Winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. Lows level off around 26 tonight. Partly cloudy skies. Daytime
Okay,
highs
we're gonna need
approaching
to hear your
49 tomorrow.
voice.
Mainly clear skies. Mainly sunny skies and calm Wednesday with daytime highs
It'll be
approaching
warm
52.
today,
49. Chance for
44
scattered rain
degrees.
showers.
Okay, Pam, if you could talk for me, please, for the Facebook so I can test.
Okay.
Okay.
This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice
WCPT
and be glad in it.
Veteran Minute. When thinking of the revolutionary.
Okay, I can hear.
Okay, and so the Bears broke my heart yesterday.
Do you know the name
once
of the
again.
man who is believed to be the creator of the
What happened?
They lost.
Von Steuben. 3 years into the
I
war,
mean,
Benjamin Franklin
and it
recommended
was
von
so
Steuben.
close.
No, but they lost by the same amount they lost last week.
It's
So
just
that's-
like, what are you doing? Y'all are killing me here.
Dismissed from the Prussian military for
Oh.
being gay.
Last
General Washington did not see his
3 points last Sunday, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, are you all serious right now? But I can't be feeling as bad as they feel up in Minneapolis. 40-3, the Cowboys. It's like, are you serious?
For socializing with them, being seen as a leader
Yesterday was
and a friend.
heartbreaking.
The addition of von Steuben led to the turning point of the
Heartbreaker.
Revolutionary War. And when the war ended,
Yeah, we were watching.
the United States
We were
Oh.
watching it. We were eating
New York
at Robinson's and watching the game.
2 men
Mhm.
open romantic relationship with. This has been a WCPT Veteran Minute.
This is Joan Esposito, and WCPT is proud to support labor unions and the hardworking middle class. We do it with our monthly Union Strong segments. Join me as I welcome respected labor leaders to my show and get their perspective on current events, local and national politics, and how labor unions are more relevant today than ever. Proudly sponsored by Smart Local 265, IBEW Local 176, Finishing Chicago, and Roofers and Waterproofers Local 11. Learn more at WCPT820.com.
What's your least favorite season? Now, if you're like me, it's cold and flu season. So get relief from it this year with Mucinex DM. With cough and chest congestion relief for 12 hours in just 1 dose. That's 3 times longer than products. Mucinex DM makes any season comeback.
Madam
season. Even
Pam,
cold and
I
flu
am
season. Get 3 times the
getting my
relief in
last
just 1
bit of
dose
show
with
prep.
Mucinex DM.
This is a
Couldn't
new
be
show.
simpler.
Okay.
Nothing lasts longer among over-the-counter
So I
cough
have to
remedies. Mucinex DM
pull a
provides
lot of
12
other
hours of relief for
information.
chest congestion and cough, day or night.
Mhm.
This is direct.
Okay.
Because facts matter. You are listening to
Scores, things like that.
WCPT
That's what I always
820.
have to do.
We don't want you on our team.
Oh.
You're
How much
just-
time do I have?
This
Hey, y'all.
3 minutes now.
Thank you so much.
Don't
Thank
you
you.
care
Thank
what
you.
other people think?
Millions who live and are affected by obesity face weight bias every day.
You're not the right fit for this job.
Unfair judgment by others.
Just stop eating so much and exercise some. You lose all this weight.
These people often blame themselves.
It's just me. Nobody likes me. I do exercise and eat right. And I talk to my doctor.
Weight bias hurts.
Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity
There
and
we go. That's
respect.
what I was looking
Your
for.
words and actions matter.
Let's
Ah.
stop weight bias.
Let's work together.
Be part of the solution. Go to stopweightbias.com and learn more. A public service message from Obesity Action Coalition.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Ooh.
Resources in the world, kindness is the most precious. For more than 140 years, American Humane has been working to protect animals in disasters, on farms, on the silver screen, and in zoos and aquariums caring for the world's vanishing creatures. You can help too by making humane choices every day. Visit AmericanHumane.org for simple ways to build a more caring and compassionate world for all of us.
All right, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, that spot that
I'm not living through 60 minutes.
you found something a little different. What if instead of your private stash, you found a simple phone number, 1-800-662-HELP? What would you do? Would you stop and give it some time? you make the call? The truth is, all judgments comes with guilt.
Madam Pam, love you so much.
Yes, my dear.
And thank you for being with us today. It means so much. I would love to have you be more involved in the show. There's so much that I want us to talk about here. But I will call you about that, okay?
Okay, honey.
I really, this is a different kind of
10 seconds.
platform that I've got here. And this is, we'll talk about it.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving week. Hope that you are getting ready for a beautiful Thanksgiving and praying for those 1 in 4 Americans who will not be able to prepare a Thanksgiving meal for themselves. Please check churches and shelters and get a meal. But also those of you who you might think someone might need a little something, please be kind to them. Please be kind. It means so much. So many people are living in their cars. So many people are homeless. So many people are near homeless. People are struggling out here, and we just need to be kind to one another. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. We got a fast-moving show today. Want to talk with you about this horrific killing at this gay nightclub out in Colorado. What happened there, and why are hate crimes against our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ plus community, why are they on the rise? What's going on, everybody, in America? And we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is really at low ebb. More and more Americans mistrust them. They think they're politicized. They do not feel that they're fair dealers. And now we find out that there has been a real right-wing push, surprise, surprise, on the court. A lot of backroom dealing, talking with the Supreme Court justices about different cases, abortion and things like that, as they move their decisions far to the right. And so now people are wondering about an ethics probe. I mean, no one is able to check the Supreme Court. You can't check the justices. I mean, Clarence Thomas and all the rest of the justices, quite frankly, they weigh in on any case that they choose. Now, is that right? You tell me. I mean, wait a minute. Everybody, but they can be impeached, but they're never impeached. I mean, that rarely happens, maybe once in a couple of 100 years. So I want to know from you, what about the Supreme Court? We're going to talk about this latest case that the New York Times just broke. And then, why is Georgia still so important? Yeah, they said the Democrats did maintain a bare majority in the U.S. Senate, but they still need Georgia. That next vote coming out of Georgia gives them the cushion to check Senators Manchin and Sinema. Yeah. All of this is power politics, everybody. So don't talk to me about Herschel Walker and his qualifications. People don't care about that. They put a potato in that seat. If the right wing can get out of that potato what it is that they need. I mean, I'm very, very serious. So we need to just really be honest and be clear on what we're dealing with here. So I want to hear from you today. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about, first up at the bottom of the hour, this tragedy in Colorado. What is going on? What is going on with these attacks on our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community? Indeed, at this club, they were going to be honoring and memorializing our transgender brothers and sisters. And some people are wondering about that. And of course, the grandfather of the suspect, of the man who was apprehended, who was killing everybody, the 22-year-old, his father's a prominent politician out there. And indeed a prominent supporter of Donald Trump's. I would not pin that all on Donald Trump. I don't want to do that. But it's just very interesting, the profile that I was reading in the Daily Mail about this gentleman's grandfather. So we're going to be talking about that today. I mean, what possessed him to go into that club and just wearing body armor? Now, if you're going to go in there and kill people, why do you need body armor? Now, if you man up, woman up with you, if you're going to shoot a bullet, then you need to be able to take one. Yes, I said that. Yes, and I'm nonviolent. But goodness gracious, these people go in trying to murder people, and that's what they do, but they don't want to get hurt. Are you serious right now? Oh, unbelievable. It is Monday, November 21st, 2022. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today on this cold day in Chicago. The winter is here, y'all. Ooh, and if you have seen me, I have looked like the snow bunny, and I'm serious about it. In Chicago, we're going to have a high, though, of 44 degrees. It's going to warm up today. It's going to be sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 31 degrees. Mostly sunny, though. In the NFL, look, my heart is broken. My heart is broken. Oh, the Bears. I mean, Pam Morris-Walton, you said they lost by the same number of points that they lost last week. I mean, by a field goal. Falcons 27, the Bears 24. I mean, and it was tied. They were tied up right up until the end. Unbelievable. God bless them. But wow, we're feeling a little bit better than everybody up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Matt, I am so sorry about what happened with this massacre of the Vikings. Cowboys 40, the Vikings 3. Whew. Well, in the NBA, the Celtics will be facing off against the Bulls, and the Heat will be facing off against the Timberwolves, and Kyrie Irving has returned to the Brooklyn Nets, everybody. In the NHL, the Penguins 5, Chicago 3. Call me at 773-763-9278. I want to hear what you're going to be doing for Thanksgiving, everybody. I want to hear what you're going to be doing for Thanksgiving. Details are still rolling in after a mass shooting at an LGBTQ plus nightclub in Colorado Springs, Colorado this past weekend. A 22-year-old gunman allegedly killed. He was apprehended at the club by 2 brave attendees at the club, everybody. He killed 5 people and injured at least 25 others when he opened fire at Club Q just before midnight on Saturday. He was subdued, and he's now in police custody. He has a history of violence. Police confirmed he was arrested in June of 2021 after a standoff at a home where his mother lived after he threatened his mother. Oh, wow. He made a bomb threat while there and other threats of violence. The shooting has shaken the area's LGBT community, but not just there, but all over the country. We're going to be talking about that with Dr. David Johns in just a few minutes. According to residents, Club Q was a second home full of chosen family for the LGBTQ community in Colorado Springs, the state's second largest city. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that Colorado's governor is Jared Polis is the nation's first openly gay governor. God bless the people of Colorado. The World Cup has begun, everybody. The 2022 World Cup is underway in Qatar, set against a backdrop of controversy regarding the country's human rights record. In the years and months leading up to the event, critics have cast a wary eye on Qatar's treatment of migrant workers, its laws around homosexuality, and attitudes toward women in society. Workers who built the infrastructure for the event have described extremely difficult conditions, unpaid wages, and several deaths among their ranks. Some players and countless soccer fans have spoken out about their belief that the sport should be inclusive, a sentiment they say runs counter to Qatar's laws. So we're going to see how this all works out. President Biden, for his portion, offered himself up to our team, to America's team, and so we're pulling for them, everybody. Elon Musk reinstated former President Donald Trump. I want you all to call me about that, because he went to his followers and said, you let me know. Should I let him back on? Yes or no? Overwhelmingly, they said, bring him back on. So he reinstated former President Donald Trump's Twitter account over the weekend, continuing his wave of controversial decisions as the social media platform's new owner in the aftermath of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Former President Trump, then President Trump, was banned from Twitter and several other platforms on the grounds of inciting violence, everybody. So now he is back. Will he tweet? He hasn't done that yet. If he returns to Twitter, where he held significant influence during his presidency, it could change the course of the 2024 election. So we'll see what's going to happen, everybody. House Republicans are planning next year's leadership after winning control of the chamber in the midterm elections. Current House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is poised to take over as Speaker of the House, but it is not a done deal, everybody. And so we're going to see what's going to happen. GOP Representative Adam Kinzinger lambasted McCarthy on Sunday, saying that he doesn't think that McCarthy will last long as Speaker and will have to cut deals that will divide the Republican majority. We're going to see. It is going to be a very, very, very interesting time. In the meantime, we've got some good news from our gospel sister. That's right. And we've got to get her on here to talk about this book. If you see her, you would see that she's a miracle. You would never know that she's the recipient of a heart transplant. And you've got to get her book, 57 Days, Wait for a New Heart. I remember when you had just had it, and I saw you walking with your wonderful husband, Mr. Walton, just getting you through the airport. I remember getting off the plane with you at Midway. And I said, I'm going to pray for Pam, but this woman is a woman of such great spiritual power. I know that she's going to make it, but God sent her a helpmate. I know that's what we do, a helpmeet. He did do that. And he has been by your side every day. And we love Mr. Walton so much, but we love you. We thank God for restoring your health and for being a testimony, a living testimony of God's power. God bless you. What is the good news today? And happy Thanksgiving, my dear gospel sister and mentor.
And happy Thanksgiving to you. I'm wishing all of your incredible viewers and listeners a blessed Thanksgiving. I am. And today, Santita, it's about examining yourself. Examining yourself. I believe, now this is Pam, I believe there are 3 questions that sometimes can haunt us. Our deepest desire is that the answer will always be yes. The answer would always be yes. And question 1, did I do the right thing? I hear you speak about what is going on and what has been going on, what just went on in Colorado. Did I do the right thing? Am I doing the right thing now? OW. Will I do the right thing? Certain scriptures, everybody, certain scriptures spoke to me and got my attention. It got my attention, and it took me out of denial. It took me, Pam, out of denial. Corinthians challenged me by stating, examine yourself. That's in the Bible, those 2 words in the book of Corinthians. And in the book of Timothy, it encouraged me. One examined me, and the other encouraged me. I want to encourage you this morning, everybody. Stir up the gift that is in thee. Stir up the gift that is in thee. Now, this is what I think we need to do that. In order to examine yourself and stir up that gift and pursue your worthy goal of accomplishing something and having a meaningful life. Having a meaningful life, everybody, begin to ask yourself some of these questions. Are you excited to get up in the morning? Are you excited to get up in the morning? I'm on God's wake-up list every morning, everybody, with Mario's heart. Happy about your life now? Are you happy? This is Thanksgiving week. Are you happy about your life right now? Do you have a purpose in your life to which you are committed? What are you proud about in your life? What are you proud about? We're talking about examining yourself and stirring up the gift that is in thee. What do you love? What do you love? And who do you know for sure loves you? fear, what guilt, what anger, and on to that you need to let go? Are you using your talents? Are you using your talents and abilities? Do you feel that what you are doing right now is rewarding? Do you really believe you're helping somebody? Rewarding to yourself? Do you think where you are right now is wonderful? Are you happy with your health? I am. Are you happy with your health? Do you look forward to the future with confidence? Do you look forward to the future? This is November. Santita said this is November the 21st. We don't have that many more years and more days in this year, everybody. So do you look forward to the future with confidence? I want to say this morning, stir up the gift that is in thee and examine yourself. Thank you, Santita.
Amen to that. That's right. We're almost in 2023. Where did the year go? But where did you go? Where are you? Who are you? Oh, everybody, get the book. 57 Days. Wait for a New Heart. It is going to bless you. I'm going to have her back on so she can talk about it. I love you, Pam Morris Walton. I love you, love you, love you. Happy Thanksgiving. That's right. And there's
and
what?
The same to you.
Nothing.
Happy Thanksgiving. Nothing you can do about it. Nothing.
Love this woman. Dr. Shanina Knighton is joining us, of course, infection preventionist, indeed one of the world's leading authorities in that field. And we're so glad that she's with us today, Thanksgiving week, trying to figure out how we can stay safe, how we can be healthy in this holiday season, Dr. Knighton.
Good morning. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice.
Yeah, likewise. I was going to say, I'm hoping things slow down a little bit this week. But excited and hoping that it's slowing down enough for people to really put things in perspective in regards to health and safety. I more so want to spend time talking about individuals that are vulnerable. It's something that many of us take for granted because we assume that just because we get a cold or we get an illness, that those around us also can recover from them in a manner for which we do. And it's things that we take for granted. And I had an interesting comment that was made on my page, and I haven't responded yet because it's like, how do you respond? But when a gentleman said, you know, I'm cuddling my 6-month-old that has RSV. We have to do better. And those were his words, because there was a awareness of accountability that they are that child's protector, and that the only way for which that baby got sick was for what it is that they exposed that child to. It's the same thing with older adults. It's the same thing with individuals that are immunocompromised. If we know that we are out here during the holiday season, still engaging with others, still, you know, let's say not wearing a mask in unknown settings, still touching surfaces and not cleaning our hands, we have to recognize that we are very much so putting individuals at risk that we love. And I also hate to say it, but when deaths occur, it happened around the holiday season for many reasons. Life does happen, and no, I'm not God. But when we talk about influenza, when we talk about COVID-19, when we talk about a cold that ended up turning for the worse into pneumonia or something more serious, it typically happens during the cold months because we know that that viruses love this type of weather. And so it's important for us to recognize what are the things that we should absolutely be doing. That is making sure that provided the resources, you are cleaning your hands as much as possible. It means that when individuals are coming into your space, that you are asking them to abide by your infection prevention and control protocols that you had a heightened awareness of and was doing diligently back in March of 2020 when we didn't know what was going on. So I just remind people to go back to what that feeling was when you were thinking about how can I keep my loved ones safe but still be around them. Go back to those hand hygiene practices. Make sure you're still setting up your hand hygiene stations at home. Make sure that you're still screening individuals that will come inside of your space. Make sure that you are aware that if you want individuals to come into your home and wear masks, that you are asking them to do so and that you are asking them to do so properly. Make sure that if someone will be in your home and you're going to have an overabundance of company, which again is not advised, but we understand that we are human, is making sure that you're cleaning down doorknobs and commonly touched surfaces that more than one individual will come in contact with. It is also making sure that if you're around children and their nose is running, making sure that the parent not only just wipes their nose, but making sure that they wash their hands behind. Remember, there's a saying that literally if a kid has a cold, then they give us pneumonia or the flu. So it's ensuring that we are keeping our germs to ourselves, and it's making sure that others keep their germs to themselves.
You know what? Tomorrow, because I see this happening during our holiday gatherings. Tomorrow, could you talk to us about what our Thanksgiving dinner should look like? You know, what the environment should look like. You know, the hand sanitization stations, all of that. We need to know from you just what it should look like. Loving you, Dr. Shanita Knighton. Hey, Dr. Nina, that's her handle. Let's talk about what happened in Colorado, everybody, back on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Knighton, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, girl, just a little tired today, but I'm good. I am good. I'm good. But that was a heck of a reminder. I mean, because people have moved on from COVID. They have. they have moved on. They're done.
I know.
But it's not
so
done.
Sad because what they say, like the minute that you let your guard down, and that's when stuff start going crazy. And that's what bothers me more so than anything is that we're not paying attention to what happens when that happens. Let's just say that.
We're not. No one's thinking about that, huh? I know what pardon me, I just trying to plug something in. I know what I'm seeing. No one is thinking about that. No one is even thinking about that. People are done. They're done with COVID. Done. My dear sister, they are done. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I don't know. I don't know. So we got to talk about what happened in Colorado Springs. Okay. Oh, but your family's well? Shanina? Oh, did she leave?
Oh, I'm on mute. Yeah, no, I was just on mute. No, everybody's doing okay.
You ready for the holiday?
Where you gonna get? I ain't doing too much. I told you, as long as I'm grateful. As long as my earnings live and I ain't got to cook.
Sending Dr. David Johns through and Chaparral.
That's my claim thing.
I hear you. Well, let me welcome Dr. David Johns to the show once again. Dr. Johns, how are you?
Good to be back with you.
It's great hearing your voice. I've got to do a quick read with Chaparral Wells. Has a wonderful catering company here. But I want you to meet Dr. Shanita Knighton. She's one of the leading infection preventionists in the world. And I think she'd be a great person for you to know because her specialty is preventing infection. She's a registered nurse. She's been a lecturer at Case Western Reserve University. She's taught there. And she is now the executive director of the Association for Professionals in Infection Control and Epidemiology Center.
60 seconds, everyone.
And it's the largest gathering of its kind in the world. And whenever I can get her out to our community, I really try to do that. So I'd like to connect the two of you.
I welcome it.
Okay. And this is a great freedom fighter. So here we are. Stand by, everybody. Okay, I can hear a little something in the background, but it's all right. We're good. Hey, Chappelle.
Hey, Santita, how are you?
Good. I can't wait to get my vittles. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, Chappelle, you have no idea.
10 seconds, everyone.
No idea. I'm so excited. So excited. Woo. Okay, stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to be talking about this shooting, this murderous spree at the LGBTQ plus nightclub, Club Q, out in Colorado Springs, Colorado. What happened? As we're watching crimes against our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters escalate all across the country. What's happening, everybody? What's happening? But we're going to be talking with Dr. David Johns about it. Indeed, a great freedom fighter. He is the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition. But while he advocates for the LGBTQ community, the Black LGBTQ plus community, but he has always worked in the civil rights space. And so I'm so glad to welcome him to the show today. But before we get right to him, it's Thanksgiving week. Are you taking any more orders, Chappelle?
No, Santita, we are closed for Thanksgiving.
Did you say you are done?
Have reached our limit. Yes, we have reached our limit. But after Thanksgiving, we'll be rolling right into Christmas, so you can get your Christmas orders in starting next week. So give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We can handle all of your turkey, your mac and cheese, your greens, your green beans, as well as also your masticholi, your Cajun pasta, as well as also our sweets, which are sweet potato pie, red velvet cake, caramel cake, German chocolate cake, whatever it is that you need for your holiday needs. Don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Oh, love it. I can hear you a little tired. You've been cooking. I can tell. I can hear it. Take care of yourself and get you a little bit of rest, as everyone is getting those great victuals from Chappelle at Celebrations by Us. Everybody, what happened? There was a mass shooting that killed at least 5 people and injured at least 25 others on Saturday night, just before midnight in Colorado Springs, Colorado. What happened? Why did this happen? And it happened just before they were going to celebrate Transgender Remembrance, a day of remembrance. That was to have happened hours later on Sunday. So let's talk about this. What happened at the club? Thankfully, 2 of the attendees at the club apprehended this 22-year-old young man. We need to know what is going on. He walked in body armor, wielding an AR-15, and then commenced a shooting. And in less than 2 minutes, killed 5 people and injured at least 25 others. And all of this back and forth about not mentioning his name, I don't agree with that. I think you need to know who did what. I think you need to find out who their families are. I think you need to know all of those things because they have a story. right? I mean, he has a story. So let's talk about that with Dr. David Johns. Dr. David Johns, indeed, the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition. Dr. Johns, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad that you're back with us today.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate the invitation and hate the topic, but I'm happy to be here.
I hate the topic. What happened? What? As far as you know, as far as these press reports, it's unfathomable to me. This 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich. I don't know what his thinking came from, and I think that we need to understand these people have names. Unlike many other shows, I believe in calling their names, understanding who they are. I want to know who is your mother, who is your father, what is the environment in which from which you spring. He comes from, at least his grandfather is someone who is conservative, whatever that means, because I think we're all a mix of many things. But talk to me, what happened, and what do you think about this particular crime as we're watching? Hate crimes. This is now, they're saying that we should see this through the lens of a hate crime. What is a hate crime, and why should we look at this through that lens?
So specifically, a hate crime is one that is motivated by ignorance, fear, stigma, or phobia of people who are members of a sexual minority community. We should be clear that as long as there have been Black people, specific to the audience that we're talking about, and or that I work for, and or the people that I love, as long as there have been Black people, we've been beautifully and incredibly diverse. And there's a writer I love, Sambufu Some, who says that in my village of West Africa, while the words lesbian and gay didn't exist, the word gatekeeper did. So I just want to underscore a point you made in your introduction, which is that I have an opportunity now to lead LGBTQIA plus inclusion work, and that has always been civil rights work. I submit for folks who might question that the legacy of Byron, who's the architect of the modern March on Washington, who introduced pacifism in so many of our leaders, and who did so much more. I also want people to appreciate that this is not an isolated incident. I was just in Philadelphia at a convening of Black male educators, reminding the community that in 2016, on June 13th, I took a train from, after producing the first ever White House Summit for African American LGBTQ plus youth, and I hopped on a train to Philadelphia because we woke up the day after the summit ended to the Post nightclub massacre. On June 12th, 2016, a 29-year-old gunman wounded nearly 60 people. I say that to say these are not isolated incidents. I say that to say that while we may never understand fully the motive or the mindset of the gunmen, we know the conditions that helped to create them. So my last point is this. I spent a lot of time over the weekend before this incident thinking about white folks who and others who love and uphold white supremacy. And there's an organization, Moms for Liberty, that was founded in Florida, backed by Ron DeSantis, who, after being incredibly strategic, was able to be appointed to the school board in South Carolina, Berkeley County, engage in a political witch hunt, fire a Black school board leader, ban critical race theory, which everyone should know is not taught in elementary schools. It hasn't been. It's something that a few people, including myself, who is someone who has a PhD, studies it. But they did these things to ensure that cultures that allow people to fear and hate that and those which they don't understand persist. And they're doing so knowing that there is state support for people to have access to guns, including those who have violated existing standards that are supposed to make us safer, and because there's still so much more work to do so that we put people over socially constructed identities or over guns in this instance.
We're talking with Dr. David Johns about this murderous spree that this young man, 22 years of age, Anderson Lee Aldrich, that he went on. It turns out last year he was arrested because he threatened his mother with a homemade bomb and other weapons last June. And yet there was the record of what he attempted to do was sketchy. We do know, according to this Daily Mail report, that his grandfather is allegedly Randy Vopel, who is a Republican state lawmaker in the California State Assembly. I believe in calling these people's names, Dr. Johns, because I want to know who they are. There was a documentary that predates you and me about I think it was Malcolm X back in the 60s, and it was entitled The Hate That Hate Produced, which of course was not Malcolm X, but seeing black hurt, black anger, black disappointment is something that has always been very unsettling to white people. But I think we have to mature in our politics and hear and understand black and brown and indigenous and Asian and all of the and LGBTQ plus, all the people, everybody's got a bad name except them. So I think we need to grow up in our politics and grow up in it spiritually so that we can understand the pain that is caused by people. I'm trying to figure out how a 22-year-old would walk into a club, Dr. Johns, body armor, AR-15 style rifle, and just start shooting people, having had a prior incident the year before. Help me with that. And I mean, and what kind of environment produces this 22-year-old? I don't understand that.
Environments that are framed and formed to preserve and perpetuate white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism. Environments that allow elected leaders at every level to redraw district boundaries, to hoard power, to prevent people from exercising their right to vote. Environments that allow angry moms who are upset at mask mandates and other attempts to keep children safe in the midst of unprecedented pandemics, on top of and during pandemics like white supremacy, who then organize into groups like Moms for Liberty and make it difficult for competent educators who actually understand child development to do their job. And states where attorney generals weaponize and criminalize laws to put in prison parents and caregivers who prioritize care for their children over people's personal feelings that are rooted in ignorance and hate. Those are the conditions that create gunmen and that allow for routine shootings in schools and other places like clubs that should be safe spaces.
I'm still not understanding. I don't understand how someone goes into a club. He's willing to kill you, but he's protected himself from getting shot. He walked in with body armor on, Dr. Johns. I mean,
well, yeah, but yes, and a part of this is you're not going to understand this because you're a logically minded, rationally thinking person who believes in humanity. But when we step back from the contemporary ways in which we, as Black folk, FLX, are fighting against mutated forms of white supremacy, we understand that folks who don't see us as full beings, who don't believe that we deserve humanity, the same folks that have weaponized Black Lives Matter and convinced some Black folks to defend their lives not mattering, is a thing. I was reading this morning, or rereading rather, Toni Morrison, who talks about words as things, and acknowledging that we're still struggling to allow Black folks to name themselves in ways that are affirming none of the ways in which people, white people in this instance, but also all my kinfolk ain't my kinfolk, but people not valuing the full humanity of others should not confound us. It is something that is baked into the very fabric of our country's being.
Well, we're talking with Dr. David Johns, Executive Director, National Black Justice Coalition, indeed one of the part of the new vanguard of the civil rights movement. Yes, he does advocate for the LGBTQ plus community, specifically the Black LGBTQ plus community, because they need defending, they need to be seen. But I've seen him just broadly integrate this into the civil rights space. And I guess that's something I'm sensitive to, Dr. Johns, because I know people would laugh when Reverend Jackson ran for president the first time in 1983, the first time that the gay community had a desk in a presidential campaign was in the Jackson campaign. And so I always saw all of our rights interlocked, interwoven, because we had a president at that time who did not even mention AIDS. He did not mention AIDS, President Reagan, until 1986. We were 6 or 7 years into that tragedy before he even said the word AIDS. So I'm just trying to figure out how it is. Because I've seen at least one person who spoke about what happened, and it was an African American man. Was this racially motivated at all? Were there a lot of Black people at the club that night, or do you know anything about that? About who was there?
That we do not know. I want to point people, there's a Black, Leslie Herod, Leslie is a Black, queer, a Colorado State Representative, a candidate for Denver Mayor. She's a member of the National Black Justice Coalition's Good Trouble Network, named in the spirit and legacy of our brother leader, Congressman John Lewis. But I want to encourage you to follow her. She's on the ground and is closest with regard to proximity. At this point, we do not know if there were Black people who were killed, who were either victims, one of the 5 people we know who were murdered, or one of the nearly 20 people injured, a third of which have gunshot wounds. What we do know is what you said earlier, which is that Club Q has been heretofore a safe space for LGBTQIA plus people. But note here, which is that I use same gender loving, not gay, because gay is a white male identifier. Okay. But we also, as you noted, that this weekend, Sunday in particular, was Trans Day of Remembrance. This past week was Trans Awareness Week. And so those things are what are allowing local officials, in particular law enforcement, to use the classification of a hate crime. But we do not know specifically, to answer the question, the racial or ethnic constitution of the victims thus far.
Well, I was asking about the hate crime because, oftentimes law enforcement, and I think correctly, they're very cautious about saying that they're investigating a crime as a hate crime, but immediately, the law enforcement community said, no, we are looking at this through that lens. We're not calling it a hate crime yet, but we are looking at it through that lens. Let me ask you this, because they were going to have a transgender day of remembrance ceremony, function, celebration, if you will, at the club later on Sunday. And you said last week was, what was it in relation to the transgender community?
Trans Awareness Week.
What don't we know? I mean, because we fear what we don't know, right? So what don't we know?
3 things. One is I want to push on something you said earlier in love, which is that Black LGBTQIA plus folk don't need to be saved. We need to be considered. Too often people think about Black folk or what it means to be Black in this country or through the diaspora. The work of white supremacy erases us or compels people to ignore us. And so what we need is for folks to appreciate that we've always been here, a part of the community, not only in the spaces that people sometimes joke about, like the choir director or the makeup artist, but in every facet of how we show up and take up space and shift culture. That's one. The second thing is that there has been significant, in my lifetime, progress with regard to acceptance and recognition and support of gay, bisexual, to a lesser extent, lesbian folk. There's still so much more work to do around transgender and gender nonconforming and gender non-binary members of our community. Yesterday, Transgender Day of Remembrance or Resilience is important, in part because every year for at least the last 6 years, Black women have been disproportionately murdered, experience what is called fatalistic violence. And too often members of our community don't even know their names. People still to this day reference, rightfully so, George Floyd, who was murdered by the state. But the same week that George Floyd was murdered, a Black trans man named Tony McDade was murdered by the Tallahassee Police Department. I say all of this to say something that is not mine. It's a lesson that I learned from Fannie Lou Haber, which is that unless and until all of us are free, none of us are free. And so for folks who really believe in and purport to love Black people, you have to love all of us, which includes those of us who are members of sexual minority communities.
Well, I guess I was, and correct me whenever I am not on point, because I'm not a member of the community. So as things evolve, there are things that I miss. One thing that I have not missed is that I grew up in an environment, Dr. Johns, in which I grew up with everybody. I grew up in the church. I grew up in the civil rights movement. I knew, praise the Lord, Bayard Rustin, and so many other people who were not out necessarily, but they were out to their friends. We just knew them. And they were embraced, they were accepted. And so a lot of the pushback that I hear discussed in the Black community, while we have our problems, quite frankly, that's something that I just have not seen. But I want to know, how can we get from where we are just generally as a society to where we need to be? Because what happened on Saturday night, like you said, it's not an isolated incident. This is something that happens far too often, whether it's in aggregate or whether it's individual. Where do we go from here?
I hope you hear my heart when I say that I love and appreciate you, and the way in which you show up to have these conversations. The easiest thing to do is to not ask what you just asked, or to hope to have this conversation about this incident and how it provides us as a community to sit with each other and to think critically. So practically, there are three things. One is to ask the question.
Okay, now what about the question that I asked was off base? Tell me.
No, I was trying to say the exact opposite.
Oh, okay.
Asking the very thing to do. And in particular, I was trying to double down to ensure that what I said earlier in terms of what I want to push on with love is something that I receive and I appreciate.
Oh, sure.
Exactly.
But I'm just letting you know that even when I air, tell me.
When I say to you that you have it,
sure.
that having an open heart, demonstrating compassion and competence, and seeking to understand and or to simply engage in conversation is what we all need to do more frequently. At this point, all of us should have friends that are incredibly diverse, that can challenge us, that we can have conversations about seeking to learn about experiences that are foreign from ours. There are so many books and resources that exist that have been written by members of our community that people should have and have access to. I referenced earlier Sambufu Some, who wrote The Spirit of Intimacy. I believe you and I have talked about her on this platform before. The young man, Robert Patterson, who wrote a book called The Prophet. There are films about our experience. I tell people all the time to watch Moonlight and the film Pariah. Moving past the fear that some people learn, sometimes as a way that people have weaponized religion to suggest that we shouldn't be in community with us, is really the core of it all. And I want to offer up the National Black Justice Coalition. We're nbjc.org. There are a ton of resources that we have on our website that I hope are useful to people in this regard, including a terminology guide, something that says, here are terms that help to facilitate these types of conversations, and here are terms that you should avoid. You and I were talking offline about an epidemiologist, and you mentioned the early challenges at the introduction of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. One of the things that vexes me is that Black people are still dying as a result of HIV/AIDS today, which doesn't have to be the case. And not just Black queer people, it's Black women, Black straight women, Black cis And so us talking about these things is an incredibly important step to us addressing some of these persistent problems.
And dealing with, discrimination in the medical community that persists. I have a dear friend who I had on the show, who I met over in Brussels. And before he went on the road, Dimitri, and we talked about this on my air. And he said, I tried to get prep before I went on the road with the Book of Mormon. Brilliant artist. And the doctor wouldn't give it to him. And then he contracted HIV. He's doing well, praise God. But I think about that, and just hearing that just infuriated me. I said, wait a minute. Here you wanted to get this prophylactic medicine and no one would give it to you? Are you serious right now? I felt like at the beginning of the COVID crisis when black folks and brown folks and working class people could not get tested. So I want you to come back to the show so that we can continue to have these conversations and just help to open our eyes, and so that we can begin to braid in all of these movements into one. Because as my father said more than 40 years ago, everybody's got a patch. And your patch is strong, but it just ain't big enough. We have to stitch them all together and come up with a wonderful quilt. And that way, when you're safe, David Johns, then I'm safe. And when I'm safe, you're safe. I'm sending you much love today. Sending you much love. And thank you for being with us today. And consider this your home. Can't wait to have you back. Maybe one day you'll go through the terminology with us, right?
Look forward to it.
Okay, because this is an LGBTQ plus affirmed station. So this is your home. Just remember that, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate all of you.
Sending you much love, my dear, dear, dear. How can we get in contact with you? What is your website?
I appreciate it. It's NBJC, the National Black Justice Coalition.org, and we are at NBJC on the move across digital platforms.
Okay, that's where I'm signed up. There we go. Everybody sending you much love. And everybody call me at 773-763-9278. Let's talk about what's happening with the Supreme Court and Georgia. Back in just a minute. You know what, Dr. Johns, before you go?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm having a lot of political panels. Let me know if you'd ever want to participate on them. Because as we're going into Georgia, December 6th, I'd love for you to participate. We do that almost every day.
Yeah, sign me up.
Okay, well, you'll be getting a call from me before the week is out. Hello, before Thanksgiving.
I look forward.
Yeah, because we're looking at why this race is still so important. You still need that cushion in the Senate. You need, so I know that you can talk about that. So I don't want to lock you into one space, because I know that you participate in a lot of spaces. Okay.
I appreciate that, dear, deeply.
Okay. Well, you got me. You got me. I'm sending you much love.
I'm sending it back your way. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a good week.
Oh no, you're gonna be back on to talk about December 6th.
I heard that, and I want to have a great week.
Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute, baby. Hold on before you go. I don't think you heard me. I mean, darling, you're gonna come back and talk about that. Okay.
So I'm excited to do it.
Yes, because they're doing a Barbara Arnwine and Daryl Jones and the Rainbow. I mean, and of course Latasha Brown, Black Voters Matter. They do. I know you're working with all these people in these spaces, but I want your voice to be heard in that space. Okay.
Do it. Dr. Arnwine had me out at the Jubilee. The Edmund Pettus Bridge commemoration recently. So yeah, my friend, I look forward to it.
Oh yeah, I got you. I got you, my boo-boo. All right, sweetie. Thank you so much. So it'll be either tomorrow or Wednesday, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, sweetie. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, you too.
God bless you. Everybody, remember, it's the National Black Justice Coalition, nbjc.org. Go on there and get educated, and we can all stand to do that. We all need each other. Let us be mindful of that. I love you so much. I'm so glad to be with you. I just, let me tell you, morning stars and all of you who are within the sound of my voice, how much you mean to me. I think about people who during this pandemic and this time
Sending
of
Attorney
isolation.
Hoffler and Attorney Connolly through.
Okay.
Still no answer from Reverend Yuri. I'll try again in a few minutes.
Of course. And and I want to bring in my sisters, a sister Erin Connolly and sister CK Hoffler. And CK, I'm going to call you a little bit later today so we can settle out. So you can let me know what so we can talk about next Monday. But I just want to thank you, Erin, and you, CK, and of course Reverend Dr. Yuri and the whole Santita Jackson Morningstar family for being a family, for becoming a family. In this time, during the holiday season, people really struggle with loneliness and with a lot of regret, a lot of pain, and we really people can feel alone. And I just want to thank you for embracing me over the past 3 years. You've been so wonderful and so loving, and I love you all. I hope you know that I love you all. Yes, you, Carol Soskin, as we're coming up on the Hanukkah season, my sister. My Christmas card. I love you, Carol, out there in Beverly Hills. But I just want to thank you all for reaching across whatever limitations we might have grown up with, that we might have had. And I just thank you for embracing each other and for being so loving and so kind. And I love you all. I love you, love you, love you. So, and I love you, CK. I love you, Erin. But I have to put John first. Sorry, Erin.
Well, we love you. We love you. Mutual. Absolutely.
But I just had to say that because it, I want to start CK and Erin with the Supreme Court, and we can just pivot into Georgia. We don't have to stay on the Supreme Court for 20 minutes, okay? But to explain what's going on, given the fact that trust in the Supreme Court is at such low ebb, I think it's important to talk about this, because there are no checks on the Supreme Court, you guys. I mean, it's just crazy. It's like they can do whatever the blankety blank they want to. Technically, that's not true, but actually it is. It's just crazy. So anyway, but I'm glad to hear your voices today, my sisters.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much. And John and I feel the same way about you and your whole family. And thank you for bringing us into the Morningstar family. We feel so honored to start our day, so many days on your show. And,
wait a minute. Because sometimes I'm like, I didn't call. I didn't send her a text. And it's so late. And then sometimes I'm like, I just don't care. I know it's 2:00 in the morning. She'll look at her text and first thing.
I will.
I'm sorry. Because sometimes I fall asleep sending a text. And that's it. Oh,
it happens to the best of us. But this Supreme Court bombshell is so important.
Crazy?
That we're talking about this morning. And CK, I cannot wait to hear your analysis of the 2014 leak, right? I think knowing how long things like this have been happening is crucial to understanding the lack of trust in the court, right? This is deteriorating over a period of time. This isn't a new leak, a new shock to the system. This is something that's been happening for a while. So.
Girl, ever since, and now we see it.
60 seconds, everyone.
Thank you, sweetie. All this corruption is being laid bare, and good. Next, how about that piece? So disgusted. I'm just disgusted, but I'm glad it's out. But, Justice Alito, bless his heart, he's just so, let's say, he has a lot of hubris. I think that's a nice way to put it, right? He's
That's
super,
one word.
Okay, well, we're going to keep it. I'm trying to stay on the radio. Super confident.
That's one word. I didn't say what the other word was on radio.
Oh, thank you.
10 seconds, everyone.
Because you have a radio show too. You understand? But reading, I mean, look, the New York Times.
We can change the world.
Stand by.
Change the world. Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thanksgiving week. Yay! Monday, November 21st, 2022. Let us be mindful of those people who are without food. 1 in 4 Americans this year, sadly, will not be celebrating Thanksgiving. They cannot afford to buy the turkey and all of the fixins. You know, encourage people. Maybe you might want to leave some food outside someone's door. Someone left groceries outside of my father's door. My grandmother and grandfather were unemployed one Christmas, and Mr. Dave from down the street, a man who I got to know, who my grandmother, because she was literate and educated, she filled out his relief papers. And that particular Christmas, because he knew my grandparents were struggling and my great-grandmother too, he went and brought them groceries and left it on the front porch. My grandmother wouldn't put it away because she said it didn't belong to us. I'm going to find out who this belongs to. He said, no, it belongs to you because I just got my first check because of you. Oh, God is in the blessing business, everybody. Please bless somebody today. Bless somebody today. Certainly make sure that people know that there are places where they can go get a meal. But let us heal the structural inequalities that make it possible for 1 in 4 Americans not to get Thanksgiving meals this year. Something's not right. If it happens that frequently, there's something wrong with the system, not the people in it. I'm Santita Jackson. It's WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Call me at 773-763-9278. Let's talk about what's happening with the Supreme Court, and let's talk about Georgia. That's right. The Georgia seat is of tremendous consequence. And what's happened on the Supreme Court, this leak that lets you know the corruption in the court, the Supreme Court, that basically goes unchecked. Got to talk about that with attorney C.K. Hoffler and attorney Aaron Connolly. Let's get right to these headlines, everybody. In Chicago, 44 degrees and sunny. And Minneapolis, St. Paul, 31 degrees, mostly sunny. In the NFL, a heartbreaker last night. Yes, I said it off mic. The Falcons 27. The Bears 24. Oh, I mean, it was so close, everybody. It broke my heart. I mean, I'm still trying to get over it. But wow. Minneapolis, St. Paul. Ooh, the Cowboys 40. The Vikings 3. God bless. In the NBA, the Celtics will be playing the Bulls tonight, and the Heat will be playing the Timberwolves. And in the NHL, the Penguins 5, Chicago 3. Praying for all of our brothers and sisters out in Colorado. Details are still rolling in after a mass shooting at an LGBTQ plus nightclub in Colorado Springs, Colorado this weekend. 22-year-old gunman. His name, and yes, I will call his name, is Anderson Lee Aldrich, 22 years of age, the lone suspect who walked into Club Q in Colorado Springs. Body armor, AR style 15 rifle, and just started shooting people. He killed 5, injured at least 25 others when he opened fire at this club, which was a safe space. The night before, they were going to have a transgender Day of Remembrance ceremony. God bless them, everybody. The gunman was subdued by 2 people in the club and is in police custody. We will be following the story on the Santita Jackson Show. The World Cup, everybody. The 2022 World Cup is underway in Qatar, set against a backdrop of controversy regarding the country's human rights record. In the years and months leading up to the event, critics have cast a wary eye on Qatar's treatment of migrant workers, its laws around homosexuality, and the attitudes around women. But the FIFA Cup is on the move. So before Sunday's kickoff, the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, went into an explosive tirade against Western critics of the event. The opening day of play marked the World Cup debut of the Qatari team, which fell to Ecuador 0-2. That's the first time that has happened, everybody. Elon Musk has reinstated former President Donald Trump's Twitter account over the weekend, after asking his followers, should he allow him back on the platform, yes or no. They overwhelmingly voted to put him back on, along with some other controversial persons. But we will see how all of this works. He's continuing his wave of controversial decisions as a social media platform's new owner. Trimming the fat, if you will. Many people have said that Twitter itself was a money-losing proposition, and so we're going to see how all of this works out. Let's get to what's happening on the Supreme Court. I think we need to find out what is the deal. There's a call for an ethics probe following this bombshell report from the New York Times. Advocates for court reform on Saturday called for Congress to investigate allegations that Supreme Court Justice Alito, who wrote the Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision that struck down Roe v. Wade, he leaked a 2014 ruling to a right-wing donor after the New York Times reported this. Everybody, what do you think about that? Reverend Ron Shank led an evangelical Christian nonprofit organization in 2014 when the court ruled on Hobby Lobby versus Burwell, which allowed religious organizations to deny employees health care coverage for contraception. And the Times spent months investigating Reverend Shank's claim, which he also detailed in a letter to Chief Justice Roberts in June, that Alito leaked the court's decision in the case to one of his top donors 3 weeks before the ruling was publicly announced. What do you think about that, everybody? I mean, this back and forth. I want to know, is it ethical? Of course it isn't. I'm not even a lawyer, and I know that. Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Attorney Aaron Connolly, talk to me. C.K., what happened here?
Well, what happened here was disgraceful. And I say disgraceful because the U.S. Supreme Court is the top court of the land, the most powerful judicial entity that we have in this country. They decide what the law is ultimately. Cases get escalated up there. They set policy. They do a lot of things. And we expect the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, to be impartial. We expect them to be nonpartisan. We expect them to really, really have the interests of the people at hand and to operate in a way that passed the smell test. I'm just going to get right basic. It passed the smell test. This does not pass the smell test. We knew, because remember, there was a leak of the actual opinion. And they were blaming a staffer, blaming it this, blaming it that, and wanting to get to the bottom of who leaked it and felt that it was such a terrible aberration, a terrible breach of confidence in all of this. That's what the internal U.S. Supreme Court folks were saying. And of course, it was a breach for it to be leaked because the Supreme Court and the way that it operates should be sacrosanct because, after all, it should be ruling in an impartial, objective way and following its own precedent. And with the Dobbs opinion, the Supreme Court deviated from its own precedent, basically said, Roe versus Wade was wrong. We're overturning it. And it's up to the states. So we know what that is. But now to have it come full circle and have this revelation that Reverend Rob Shank, I believe I'm pronouncing his name. He was quoted as saying that, he had been informed weeks before the public announcement of the 2014 ruling while he was at a dinner at the home of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito and his wife. That is inexcusable and unacceptable. While the U.S. Supreme Court justices are not held to the same standard as other judges, they do really come typically from the federal bench on some level, the Court of Appeals, that's typically the pipeline for U.S. Supreme Court justices. They, like me, are lawyers. Like me, they're held to ethical standards. Like me, they're held to standards of professionalism in general, because every single lawyer who's a member of a bar is held to those standards. Now, when you do escalate up to the U.S. Supreme Court, we know that things are very fuzzy, very fluid. We see U.S. Supreme Court justices who do not recuse themselves when they clearly have a conflict.
But CK, say stop, slow down, because I'm just a layperson here. How is it they're allowed to do that? Wait a minute. These people set the bar. for our legal
set the
system.
bar.
They set the bar, and then they don't meet it. They don't clear it. They don't recuse themselves from cases in which they have clear conflicts of interest. Clear. I mean, this is not, Clarence Thomas is not the only one on the court doing this. They have all done
No,
this.
he's not the only one.
They have book deals, and they rule. I mean, even the liberal ones rule on a book company with which at least one or two of them had contracts. I'm like, what are you doing? What is that? Hey, come on, how am I supposed to trust the system when this is happening at the highest level, CK?
And that's why people don't trust the system.
Okay.
They don't trust the U.S. Supreme Court. They don't trust the justices. They do think the U.S. Supreme Court has become a political animal where there are people that are on the U.S. Supreme Court who were put in there just for political purposes to neutralize one side or the other. So there's been a grave wave of distrust for the U.S. Supreme Court right now. And that puts into question our entire system. You know, we were taught in civics, many of us were taught that there's a judiciary, there's a legislative branch, and there's three branches of government. But for purposes of today, that judiciary is supposed to be part of the checks and balances of our system, a tripartite system, three branches of government, all intertwined, and they're all accountable to someone. But the U.S. Supreme Court appears not to be accountable to anyone
anybody.
Based on, no, because what are the ramifications? So what can we do? Now, we're asking for investigations. The people are asking for Congress to investigate. So let's say Congress investigates and finds that there's been some aberration. Something, I doubt they'll find something illegal, but some type of ethical or professionalism aberration or violation. Well, what's going to happen? You don't need to be a lawyer to know that something smells. But what would happen? What power does the U.S. Congress, or what power does the administration have to put the U.S. Supreme Court in check? What power does the executive branch have? What power does the legislative branch have to put the U.S. Supreme Court in check? I would say very limited powers, unless there's something that is so exceptional, like, I don't know, and I don't even know if this would pass muster. If a U.S. Supreme Court justice had a gun and shot someone in the head, well, perhaps that would shock the conscience, and perhaps then we could see where there could be action taken. But for something like this, which goes to the heart of the trust and the confidence that people have of the U.S. Supreme Court, I personally don't see where there will be accountability. I believe many of the justices have just run amok. And I want to start with, I think Justice Alito, he has a lot to has a lot to say. He has a lot to answer for. Will he answer for it? Probably not. He's not going to step down. But by the way, before this was leaked, I thought he had a lot to answer for anyway. That opinion reeked of partisanship. It reeked of, in my impression, racial animus. It reeked of gender animus. It reeked of animus towards anyone. And by the way, has he looked at himself in the mirror?
But CK, they could be, but they can be impeached. Why do we not impeach them and then push them off the court?
They can technically be impeached, but they're not going to be forced off the court. Let me just pose a question hypothetically. We have presidents who can be impeached. How many presidents in recent history who have been impeached have actually been forced out of the presidency? Zero. And so, based on the impeachment process, don't talk about Nixon because it didn't go through that way. We've had many presidents have been impeached, not once, but twice, but they have never been forced out of office. There's not, and I hate to be a voice of gloom and doom, but I'm a realist. The U.S. Supreme Court, this is atrocious. This is an embarrassment. I went to law school, like Aaron went to law school, like Dr. Uri went to law school. And presumably it was to fight, well, for me, to fight for people who didn't have a voice, to make a difference, to make a change, to do something positive, not to just collect a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with just collecting a paycheck. But I went to law school for a lot of other reasons as well. And presumably when you are a public servant, you are giving your life as a professional to the public. You have to earn public trust. You get public trust. You escalate up. These Supreme Court justices, for the most part, have escalated up as public servants, as judges. And they have been held as judges before they got to the U.S. Supreme Court to a level of ethics and professionalism because there is a check on federal judges, perhaps not as much as state judges and other judges, but federal judges and judges on the Court of Appeal, there is a check and balances. There is accountability. They will be held accountable for really bad behavior, violations, ethical and professional and otherwise. But when they escalate to the U.S. Supreme Court, where we feel that they should really have the highest integrity and preserve the rules of ethics and the rules of professionalism, we see that there is that the rules are very loosey-goosey, and there really isn't anything that we can point to that can hold them accountable. So even if there is an impeachment process, I dare say that no U.S. Supreme Court justice is going to be removed. And therein lies the problem. Accountability. Because if there's no accountability for your actions, then you can just do what you want to do. And yes, we do trust people's integrity, but recently we have seen with these justices, some of them, that I believe they're failing in their professionalism, ethics, and in some cases integrity.
CK,
so I think that this is shameful, just shameful.
CK, the problem you have is that when you have a January 6th and you don't contextualize it with the mistrust of our institutions, we're missing the point. We keep trying to make it about an individual instead of a general disappointment in the system itself. The system cannot work when you turn off the cameras in the courtroom of Jussie Smollett's trial. And when his lawyers say, hey, this lawyer lunged at me, but all the cameras are off. Are you serious right now? But in another courtroom, the cameras are on. I mean, come on. It's not just Clarence Thomas, but he's a shining example.
No, it's not.
And there's something, I'm just saying on that court, on the high court, how can we don't trust the high court. Most Americans don't trust the high court. That is dangerous. That is socially unsustainable, CK. But you know what? Wait a minute. So let's ask Aaron. What do you think?
Well, I think, this is an issue that I've been academically and intellectually obsessed with since college. Okay. When I started my thesis process looking at the John Birch Society. And then one thing I started digging into and continue to look at is the influence that the Washington Post a couple years ago, I think it was 2019, did a great expose about the impact of right-wing nonprofit organizations and their donors coming together with the support of groups like the Heritage Foundation, a very powerful think tank in Washington, D.C., that makes it their priority to focus on judges and support their confirmation process, which has become like a political campaign. These groups have recognized this. They started 20 years ago in the Bush administration, where one of these guys was working with the associate White House counsel, Brett Kavanaugh, to push this agenda to get judges appointed and through the confirmation process at every level, as DK said. And this has become politicized. There is dark money that supports this movement. And many of these groups are crossing some lines with regards to the impact of religious-based money going into nonprofits, going into our political process. And there has to be a thorough investigation, a comprehensive investigation connecting these dots, right? Now we're seeing the accusations of an actual Supreme Court justice, not just one, but two. Potentially leaking information to not only media, but to top donors to influence public opinion and move the needle one way or another. And we need to know the truth of this. The Supreme Court is, as DK eloquently and elegantly summarized for us, is supposed to be neutral. There is supposed to be a separation of that branch of government that gives the people a sense of when our political side of our system and the executive and legislative branches, we all know those two branches can get a little out of hand sometimes. And we have to have that trust, that neutrality of our third branch of government to be able to be neutral enough to not tip the scales unfairly enough. And there has been times in our history where that has not always occurred, but this is a different level of crisis. And without a thorough investigation, without some true accountability for folks, whether those are staffers, whether those are clerks on the court that are participating in this process, we need to have a full understanding of what that means and be able to take, whether that's an action for impeachment of these justices, whether that's enough political and public pressure for them to be embarrassed enough to step down and not do damage to the Supreme Court if they have any respect for that institution and what it stands for in our history and what it means for our republic. That doesn't seem to be likely based on what we've seen from Justice Thomas, especially, and the actions of he and his wife, Virginia Thomas, which we talked about many times on your show, Santita. Not a big fan of Virginia Thomas and her influence upon the court.
No.
These things need to have a spotlight on them. We need to know the truth, and we need to be able to build up that trust again. I think the articles we see about this leak, about this potential investigation, are doing serious damage to the legacy of Chief Justice John Roberts and his court. And I think what we will look at when we review his tenure as Chief Justice, there's been more 5-4 opinions than ever. Mm-hmm. He has not been able to build any sort of consensus or camaraderie among those justices that create the type of lab environment where we're really digging into big legal issues and doing what's right for the law. There is an answer in all of this, and what we've allowed is justices who bring their religious and political opinions, influenced by dark money and influenced by whomever is paying off their credit card bills. Mm-hmm. And they're making decisions based on that instead of the Constitution and the legal precedent set by case law in the United States.
Well, you know what? What do you think, everybody? Jewel and Paul, I'm going to come to you. I know you have comments about guns and all kinds of things, and I'm going to take those comments. But what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Maybe we'll get to Senator Warnock and everybody tomorrow, CK. But I mean, because I think this is big. This is really, really big. If you want to look at all of this social unrest and instability in America, this is part of the reason. Part of the reason. Not only are people mistrustful of the court is not trustworthy. The Supreme Court, that's dangerous. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. CK?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's stay with this for a minute, because I think I definitely want to talk about, Senator Warnock, Aaron.
We can do the Georgia thing in 10. We can do the Georgia thing in 10 seconds. Vote.
Well, but I think we also need to look at the politics of it and look at why when you look at, because I think that we talked about that yesterday. Why, understanding where you might be able to peel off cinema. Where you might be able to peel off Manchin.
That's the importance of this election.
Yeah.
Sending Reverend Yuri through.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying I think it's important to look at the politics of that. And I don't want to rush through that, but I don't want to rush through this either.
Yeah. Well, what I think, Santita, I agree you should stay on this topic because I believe this is what people want to talk about, they want to hear about. Mm-hmm. And then and you can forecast tomorrow, whenever.
No, let's do it tomorrow. Because what we got to also push tomorrow is how people need to vote down there.
Right. And I think we need to take our time to do that. But if you wanted to just say a couple words about Georgia today.
Yeah, we can.
The couple words are vote.
Yeah, but we'll do that as we're wrapping up the show. But I want to we have Reverend Dr. Yuri here now. I want to give him an opportunity to talk about this leak. And I just think that, since this is also something that Aaron has explored, academically, I just think, we need to look at that, because if you think that January 6th came out of Trump's head, he's a marketer. He is tapping into a vein of anger here. And this is part of it. The collapse of the economic system in 2008, the collapse of your house, you cannot buy, it's worthless. Public school system is a mess, not because our children are messy, but because we decided to mess it up. And now the Supreme Court, not only knew there was some mess there, but now really Hey, Reverend Dr. Yuri, how you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Going to get some comments from you about this leak about Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito's affiliation with this right wing.
Yeah. So, but this is the thing. People have lost faith in government in general, are losing more faith in government. But fortunately, there's still a group of people, and there are a lot of people who feel that they believe that their vote counts and that their vote can possibly bring about change. But when it comes to the U.S. Supreme Court, their vote, they don't have a vote on who becomes, but they do have a vote on the senators who would be
60 seconds, everyone.
And so it is important to connect the dots for everyone of why it's important to vote and why it's important to look at these candidates because they do have a say so.
Absolutely.
And the confirmation.
Stand by. We're coming up. I just want to be able to explore this in greater depth. I'm going to run to a couple of phone calls, and then I'm going to come to you, Dr. Yuri. Okay?
Very well.
All right.
10 seconds.
Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Talking about the Supreme Court and just do they have integrity? So many of us believe that they do not. And now we're seeing that the Supreme Court is investigating an extraordinary leak this spring of the decision that overturned the Roe v. Wade decision. Okay, but in a letter to Chief Justice, let me read to you from the New York Times. In a letter to Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. and in interviews with the New York Times, the Reverend Rob Schenck said he was told the outcome of the 2014 case, the Hobby Lobby case, weeks before it was announced. But here it goes now, everybody. He used that information. He then used that information to prepare a public relations push. Records show. And he said that at the last minute, he tipped off the president of Hobby Lobby. This was the case that was before the court, his case. The craft store chain owned by Christian evangelicals, and they ended up winning the case. What do you think about that? Now there are calls for ethics probes, multiple, of the Supreme Court. Yeah, I think that needs to happen, everybody. I think that needs to happen, and we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the integrity that is non-existent on the U.S. Supreme Court. How can we trust the system if you have all of this inside dealing with Supreme Court justices, including the chief? They tell their friends, and no, we're going to work this out. Are you serious? In the Supreme Court? And these men and women have lifetime appointments, and it's hard to get them out of those jobs. Are you for real? And they don't recuse themselves from cases where they have conflicts of interest? Really? How does that work? How's that supposed to work? They already don't have cameras in the courtroom, CK. And Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Attorney Aaron Connolly and Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri, so you can't see. They're so sacred you can't see inside the courtroom that you're paying for? 773-763-9278. Because see, I want to see what they're doing. I want to see their facial expressions. I want to see all of it. And I want to know what their interests are. And they don't have to say anything to anybody, and they don't. Shameful. Jewel, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Yes, good morning, Shanita.
Good morning, darling.
Good morning.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I just want to thank you. I just want to, you get me to it. I want to say happy Thanksgiving to you. You're so
no!
I want to say happy Thanksgiving to you and your father and Rainbow Push and for everything that you've been doing. And I'm so thankful for your show.
Thank you.
You know, it gives me a lot of inspiration. I am just so delighted every morning to wake up and post and share your show, Shanita. And yesterday, Barbara Allwine was on WBLS Open Line in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, getting out the word for the voters in Georgia to be mindful to make sure that they have their votes together for December 6th, because I understand they're not aware that they had to vote again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Many voters are not aware that there is a runoff and that they must vote. They must vote once more. They don't know.
Yes, I just wanted to say that again on the air, so this way we can make sure that they're mindful of that.
Well, you know, we're going to be talking about it tomorrow, Jewel. Yeah, we're going to really be pushing that tomorrow. Okay.
Yes, that's very crucial. That's extremely important because, you know, we need a lot of things to go forward. And that's the crucifix of it. You know, we have to get that first.
I love you, Jewel. And happy Thanksgiving, my dear sister. You call back tomorrow, okay, when we talk about this.
Most definitely. Thanks. I will have a blessed day.
You too. I love Jewel. Saw her when I was up in New York, and she was at that event where you and I were, CK, and Reverend Dr. Urey at the stock exchange, and I just love Jewel. Everybody, let's talk about this call for an ethics probe following this bombshell report. I mean, Reverend Schenck recruited wealthy donors, and he encouraged them to invite some of the justices to have dinner to their vacation homes or to private clubs. I mean, he buddied up with them, and the justices did not say no. The justices said yes. Justice, are you serious? Reverend Dr. Urey, what do you make of this yet another breach of the court? We're beginning to see a lot of things that we don't want to see, but it's real. Reverend Dr. Urey.
Well, there's the breach of the court. There's the wider issue. Good morning first, Santita, to you and your guests. I mean, it's such an important issue to look at, right? Because attempts to influence the political process writ large, right? Not just how policy's made, but who sits in positions to oversee how policy is enforced. That's not a new thing. We never really had anyone to say that our suspicions had been confirmed. Here it appears that there's someone who is willing, for whatever reason, to confirm that this isn't new. I would say that that part not new isn't really shocking. We just haven't been able to prove it. Our gut has always told us that there really can't be a way that some of the things that we hear coming out of these different institutions somehow don't align with what should be done, that there's somebody who's benefiting from these decisions when they come down. The question becomes, what do you do about it, right? And here's where there's a quick bridge while we're talking about how you vote in Georgia. The issue becomes the oversight. And while federal judges do get to the Supreme Court, get lifetime appointments, that there's also impeachment power, right? There's still that possibility if by chance there is enough courage in the legislative body to pursue that as an angle, right? So the real question is, one, how do you clean up the institution? But whether or not in the Senate there is a willingness to look at this to make sure that there's not this ongoing hands-off approach to how we handle things that may go on the court. This last breach, when the Dobbs decision was coming down, I think that was just a very, very likely a process where, we didn't follow the same kind of protocol we had done before. I really don't think that this is the first time. Clearly, the Hobby Lobby decision was a critical decision in its time. But there are other decisions along the way, and as the court has become more politicized, whether folks want to like it or not, The truth of the matter is that the questioning of Supreme Court nominees has always kind of orbited around this very narrow set of rulings where you would get this interesting and curious response, like, do you think Brown versus Board of Education was rightly decided? Remember, Alito was very avoidant of that question. Many of them have been. So we should be diligent and wary of whatever comes out of the investigation, and really make sure that we don't just have a silent conversation about how the court operates with the court. We also have to have an accountability conversation with those who are going to be in the Senate to make sure that the people's voice through their elected representatives is actually carried out, to make sure that they're not hoodwinked, they're not bamboozled, they're not shucked and jived in this process.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, but I think that we also have to educate the American public. This government really is upformed by us. We just don't act like it, and we don't act upon it. The fact is, we do have recourse. Reverend Dr. Yeary, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Aaron Connolly. We can impeach people, and we actually do have the power to get people out of office. Sometimes I think, as Nelson Mandela said, our light is just too frightening for us. The power that we wield, because we have a problem. I understand how monarchies exist and oligarchies exist, because we have a tendency to elevate people above ourselves. Don't do it with God as much. We do it with people.
Santita?
Yes. This is ridiculous, because we do have recourse, CK. We do.
We do, but I just have to say, did Dr. Todd Yeary say hoodwinked, bamboozled,
Run
and
amok,
all that?
led astray.
Run
Wait a minute, girl. He's got his bow tie on today.
Shut and jive.
I just had to go back on the bamboozle.
Look, I saw the bow tie, and I'm going to see him out with the bean pie in the final call. And I'm saying that with all love to my brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam. You know I love you. Hello.
Yeah, don't play with that bean pie, though. That bean pie is for real.
Don't play with the nation. The nation protected my family when these folks were trying to kill us during the 84 and 88 campaign, particularly in 84. So I just thank y'all. Much love, much love. That's no joke.
I'm going to have to run shortly, but I just wanted to say this. We have got to, of course we have power, but power, if we don't use the power, and if we don't demand accountability, then there will be no accountability. And the U.S. Supreme Court is just doing what it wants. And I really feel badly for Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, because she is someone who does have integrity. She is someone who is the type of justice that we need to encourage on the U.S. Supreme Court. And we need to bring people back in line. That's what I believe.
Look, I agree. But I'm saying, you know what? She will not be safe if the corruption on the court is not called out, and if people are not told what it is that they can do to get these justices off the court who are unjust. We have to know that we have the power to make these institutions upright and right. We have the power to do that. CK, you want to say anything before you run out of here and do court TV? Can we see you on court TV today?
You can. You can see me. I'll be on at 9 to 10 o'clock this morning.
Which is 8 o'clock our time. That's right.
8 o'clock your time. What I wanted to say is this. It's important to vote. People have to understand that there's a connection between the voting, the U.S. senators that we elect. We saw the confirmation hearings, and who ultimately sits on the U.S. Supreme Court. There's also a connection with who we elect as president, as we saw with former President Trump and all the people that he put on the U.S. Supreme Court. So we have to be very cognizant that it's all connected, but we also have to realize that the accountability for the U.S. Supreme Court justices right now is non-existent because we, the people, haven't pushed for there to be accountability. Yes, there's a vehicle. Yes, there's a way, but they haven't been held accountable. And I'm not so optimistic unless there's a dramatic change. And the only way a dramatic change happens is if the people mandate and say it must be so.
Amen. And we're about empowering the people. That's the only way America's going to work. You got to get involved, people. I know we are working from sun up to sun up again. I get it. But the reasons The reason this kind of corruption, Aaron, and I'm sending you much love, CK, everybody, just in a few minutes at the end of this show, tune into Court TV because that's where you're going to see CK for an hour today. Aaron, I mean, you as an academic, I mean, you're a lawyer, but you're part of your academic work has been looking at this. What do you where do we go from here? I mean, what do you want to see the people do? Because you are a political organizer. I mean, you understand also the politics of this and what America to be doing. It is socially unsustainable. It is very, very dangerous for us to trust nothing in this system, Reverend Dr. Yuri, for us to trust nothing in this system, Attorney Aaron Connolly. It is very, very dangerous for me to walk into a courtroom and say, first of all, I don't even trust you. It's dangerous for the police not to be trusted. It's dangerous for the whole system not to be trusted. And then you wonder where January 6th comes from. Are you serious? And there are lots of little January 6th happening all over the place. They almost took over the legislature up in Michigan. And that's not the end of it. Attorney Aaron Connolly, this is awful.
It is. And as you said, it's all connected, right? When we start seeing that there are cracks in our system and our process, which there always have been. Our system is built on white supremacy, first of all. So there's that. But when we take a look at these institutions and what they've been able to do over the last 20 years specifically, let's take a look at that chunk of history. When we look at our court systems at the local level, state level, up all the way up to the Supreme Court, the dangerous piece of this is part of the goal is to create this mistrust, which allows these nefarious influences to come into an otherwise protected realm. And CK is absolutely right when she says that, trust in the government, in our Congress, in our executive branch, and in our Supreme Court is at a low level. It's not just the courts that we're questioning. But what's different is the public has always been more mistrustful of our two other legislative and executive branches than they have of the court. We've been able to maintain some sense of decorum, some sense of separation, some sense of neutrality. This is a different ballgame now. And what we see with Roe v. Wade is people that haven't necessarily been reading the SCOTUS blogs or listening to the Heritage Foundation podcast or reviewing the approved judges list that these think tanks come out with every year, looking at the money donated to the senators who are on these committees confirming judges, as we saw during the Trump administration, was quicker than anything we've ever seen, the types of confirmations that we're going through, and the dangerously unqualified folks who were clearly partisan being appointed to these positions. So when a decision like Roe v. Wade has such a strong impact, not just on women in this country and people that are pregnant, but on physicians, on their livelihood, on our medical system as a whole, and the companies and entrepreneurs that are trying to innovate in that system and doing good things. When the Supreme Court is impacting them, other people start looking at how is the system working? How is this allowed to happen? And when we see more cracks like this, and there's no sense of accountability, when we talk about the influence of Thomas and the fact that he is not recusing himself from very, very important decisions that he should, right? We take
clear
then
conflict
Judge
of
Brown Jackson,
interest.
right? And we look at Judge Brown Jackson, who has less of a conflict of interest, yet is recusing herself from deciding those cases. So it's just basic pieces that our legal system and attorneys throughout this country have to follow more stringent guidelines than our own Supreme Court. And what we need to see is an investigation of this process. The fear is, because the mistrust is so deep in our Congress and in our system.
Okay, I can hear something in the background. Okay. All right. Very good.
What questions will be brought up with regard to how this investigation conducts itself. So we have to make sure that.
Wait a minute. How the Supreme Court's going to conduct the investigation? Because they are accountable to no one, and that is dangerous, Aaron.
Right. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. But what we can do, if this infuriates you as much as it does to me, there are local chapters that are organizing around defending the Constitution, the principles of the Supreme Court. And it's important to have these conversations. It's important to support judicial candidates that uphold the rule of law, that are endorsed by the local bar associations, that have approval from these watchdog groups, that aren't taking any sort of dark money from influential organizations and folks tied to some of these more nefarious, influential values, right? So we have to do our research. Judicial races are political in many, many states. And there's a very important one up in Wisconsin. So we have to look at putting our political organizing power into those races as well, to ensure that we have people of integrity and who support the true rule of law, honor the Constitution, and will not take this dark money as many of these folks do. So that's the next battle that we have to look at.
Oh, I mean, and getting educated about these judges. Reverend Dr. Urey, I mean, as Attorney Aaron Connolly is saying, we need to know who they are. But, we really need to start, and I think looking at the Supreme Court at this time is so important, because I think that if we really begin to examine it and deconstruct it, not destroy it, deconstruct it and then reconstruct it, I think that it will make it easier for us to deal with the court system just overall, because we have got to look at these judges, and it's not just Justice Clarence Thomas. We've got to look at these justices who rule on cases where they have clear conflicts of interest and they just keep on going. You could have this happen. We're talking about something that happened in 2014, Reverend Dr. Urey, Esquire. I mean, my goodness. So it makes me look at, okay, wait a minute. What about the Cruikshank decision? What about all these decisions? Who are you people? And how are you making decisions that most Americans with which we disagree? Most Americans at least support choice. Choice. How are you all coming up with this? How are you coming up with these decisions? What? I got about 2 minutes. So, they're yours.
Just very quickly on the influence, right? The Supreme Court does not monitor polls, right? The polling of the court is what's closest to them, right? That's why the influential could have an audience. If you look at Reverend Dr. Shank's letter to the justice, he said, "I've met you several times.
Hello.
But I was close enough to have you." So
wait a minute, at your vacation home, in the private club, over dinner, over lunch.
But let me go back and take you back a little bit to a term where there was a news story that one executive office holder who happened to have been vice president at the time and Justice Alito liked to go hunting together.
Ooh.
I'm gonna put that right there.
Ooh.
Right. So when we start looking at how these things don't cross-pollinate, they cross-contaminate, and here's how they do it. One controls the scrutiny, the other controls the outcome. And when there is no accountability put in place by the people's choosing, right? And here's where you got to have elected officials of courage. At the end of the day, it does no good to have rules if no one's going to abide by them. And so part of this conversation, as we're looking at these various offices, and Aaron is exactly right, we've got to start making the preparation to vote at the local, state, and federal level has to be a collective enterprise. Mm-hmm. One, when you get there, you've seen the commercials, but you haven't seen the entire ballot. And then when you get the ballot, you're overwhelmed by all of the questions that it's asking you, including which judges do you retain, which judges do you get rid of. That requires an engaged and intentional process of research and discussion amongst people who share interests, so that then they can have a more informed voice about what's happening within their political and judicial system.
Well, you know what, everybody? I think we need to step back. Look, America is yours. It's yours. It belongs to you. But you got to act like it. You need to take ownership. We need to start looking at these institutions. And I don't want to destroy them. I want to deconstruct them and reconstruct them so that they can be the just institutions that they really ought to be. But it requires you. This is a very mature form of government. Very mature. And I'm not downing anybody else. But what I'm saying to you is this. America requires you and your involvement. Otherwise, America does not work. This project does not work without you, without your being registered to vote, without your fighting for people once they've paid their debt to society to be able to get back in and vote again. We have got to eliminate slavery in America. No prisoner, no human being should be enslaved, even when you're in prison. That shouldn't happen. We're the ones who have the control. Justice Alito doesn't have the control. Justice Roberts does not have the control. Justice Thomas does not have the control. Justice Ketanji Brown doesn't have the control. You have the control. You have the power. Get registered to vote. Get serious about the vote and find out who you're voting for. They work for you. The president works for you, for heaven's sake. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are your employees. Tammy Duckworth is your employee. Dick Durbin works for you. Jonathan Jackson, Delio Ramirez, they work for you. Act like it. That doesn't mean you need to run roughshod over anybody. Now, come on, because we have to grow up in our politics and grow up in how we treat people. But these people work for you. Now, don't let them work over you and rule over you. Let them work for you. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Going to get some closing thoughts from Aaron Connolly and Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary on Facebook Live for just a few minutes. But get ready for Thanksgiving. And look, let's be loving, everybody. 1 in 4 Americans will not be able to afford to have a Thanksgiving this year. Share your food with somebody and let people know loud and clear that there are places where they can go, where they can get a meal. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Have a great one. Aaron Connolly, do you want to say anything else, my dear, dear sister friend?
Well, thank you for this topic today, because I'm going to go dig into all my old research and add to it. It's going to be my Thanksgiving break project. So,
please.
It's just when we see the dots of history connecting from where this money, and let's bring it back. It really is about money and influence. Okay. These are very wealthy, right wing, often either evangelical or very, very conservative Catholic activist people that are coming together under illegal structures, coordinating illegally with PR firms and political consultants to dismantle our current system and provide undue influence to our judicial third branch of government. Right?
And we have to look at that. And I'm not impugning the Catholic Church, and you're not either. That's not what we're saying. We're saying no. Kennedy said it.
Nor Catholic people.
Kennedy said, wait a minute. These secret societies, and he was Roman Catholic. He said, no, I'm going to expose them. Now, then he was dead a few months later. But he did say, wait, y'all, that we are being held captive here by councils that don't mean us any good. Well, he's being held captive by the top police officer in America, J. Edgar Hoover. And you want to talk about fascism? You don't want to mention him? He's fascist number one. Todd, Aaron, who sends a letter to someone's wife of their spouse in an intimate situation? Who does that?
Yeah.
I mean, no. Who brings Dr. King into his office and tries to blackmail him out of the movement? Are you for real? While you're running around with gangsters, and I love all my LGBTQ plus family, but he was a hypocrite. He's walking around in a dress, harassing homosexuals. Are you for real? What? And somehow or another, as we talk about fascists, so the first fascist we've ever seen is Donald Trump. Are you for no? Don't hand me that. If you don't want to talk about this guy, the person after whom the FBI building is named, that the building that's coming apart right now, but that's another story. Are you for real? No. Y'all. We got a lot of work to do, and the only way America is going to work is if we work it. Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman, who you remember, Reverend Yeary, said it works when you work it. The system works when you work it, but you have to work it. You have to get involved. And you ought to be outraged by this story. You ought to be outraged by the story. You ought to be, and not just by the story, you ought to be outraged by the reality. The reality that our Supreme Court is not trustworthy, is not worthy of our trust. That is dangerous and makes us all unsafe. And we're the ones who have the power to change it, and we have to change it. I saw the story in the New York Times, but I downloaded it just so I could have it, so I wouldn't have to keep the paper around. It is more than 20 pages. Okay? That's how detailed it is. This is a mess, Reverend Yeary. This is a mess. It's a mess. And it needs to be fixed, Reverend Dr. Yeary. This is ridiculous. Reverend Dr. Yeary, you have anything you want to say before we go?
I do. I was interested to kind of hear what Erin's. I think she was on the way to a final thought because I wanted to see where she ended up, and I was gonna have Fabian tag me in, Coach tag me in.
Oh yeah, because she's doing this. This is her academic. This is her field of study.
So the researching piece of who gets access and influence, and she hit on something, right? The influence and the order of religious leaders. If we think about it, there was a period in time where the driver for what happened in the courts was a direct link with what the moral instruction was in the church. And so many times, while you in some states had laws where church figures, you bear this in mind because it was just a recent change in the state constitution, I believe in Tennessee, where religious officials, clergy, could not hold public office. There was a recognition and a suspicion that if you had clergy in public office or an elected office, there would be too much influence, the notions of kind of a moral expectation. Now that is less so, you're seeing that there's been a new influence. The new religion of influence is the corporate bottom line. Think about it. Hobby Lobby is the appellant, right? When we consider how many corporations have found themselves pushing back against the expectation that there would be processes of inclusion and equality as part of how they do business, many times they figure they can take it right to the court because they've influenced the takeover of the court. When we consider what happened in the Citizens United case and how that just altered how corporations legally treated as persons can express the corporation as a person's political voice through how it spends its money to influence the outcome of campaigns. We cannot lose sight of how we have gotten to this place, and we cannot look at it in a vacuum. And I applaud Erin for doing the research to look at how this shift has occurred, because at the end of the day, the names that get before the president on a potential list of nominees doesn't come from the president. Some folks will give it, but the ones that they usually pay attention to are either the Federalist Society or the American Constitution Society, right? So those are think tanks of a particular ideology with an expectation, and within their ranks, they have folks of great influence. And to your point just a minute ago, when the justice is right, has a conversation. Boo. And look, there are all kinds of images that come back to mind about pillow talk at the time, the greatest injustice, where the point of communication from the interest of people was from the perspective of who the person, the target would be, who they're sleeping with. So let's not think that this is somehow a masterful, creative presentation. This is what's always been done. They've been able to get away with it unless there happen to be something like a leak, like someone who would come forward and say, look, I've talked to you too. There are folks who take advantage of this process. And I think there are two forms of President Trump's stand back and stand by. One is the open, obvious insurrection. One is the more sinister one that doesn't happen on television because, as our beloved brother Gil Scott-Heron would say, the revolution will not be televised.
Mm-mm. I mean, I'm saying that's why I'm saying that we have to get involved. We have to get involved. And we have to value think tanks on the left. And one of the things that was always wonderful about Operation Push and Operation Breadbasket and then Rainbow Push in its earliest iteration was that it was a think tank with legs. And we have to get back to that. You have to think and you have to march. And you also have to do advocacy. You have to do it all. That's very important, Todd and Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to do it all. These people are working all day, every day. When people talk about Reverend Jackson and his indefatigability, it's because this is a job that has to obsess you, advocating for the people. You have to do it all day, every day. These people do not let up. They don't stop. And you can't stop either. So we got our work cut out for us, everybody. You got to pay attention to everything. Everything. All day, every day. All day, every day. All day, every day. Please, everybody. Please, everybody. Just please. Let's start paying attention. Because we have watched the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world. And we haven't said enough. We basically said nothing. While we're getting less and less. This is terrible. But there is hope. Because if we wake up, if we change our minds, boy, everything is going to change. And I encourage nonviolent revolution. I do. So I love you all. Reverend Aaron, would you like to say anything before we go?
I would like to thank you again for. Go ahead.
No, Aaron, because what I was going to say one thing to you. Let me know how that research goes. Give me an idea of what your research plan is, because I think it's critical.
Well, it's something that I wanted to dig back into for a while. So thank you, Santita, for that that inspiration. And I think given what we've seen from January 6th and what we're seeing in the build up to the next election, it's something that needs a wider view. It needs a broader view from the public. So, Reverend Attorney Dr. Yeri, I would love to have you read what I come up with at the end of this process and have your editing eye and academic thoughts on this as well. And Santita, the same for you. I think we often ignore the more complicated, darker aspects of our republic and our democracy because we don't have time. We don't have the energy to think about that because it feels like it's an insurmountable enemy to fight. We don't know where to start, but there are some concrete things that we can do. And I think the main thing for your audience who is active and engaged and our organizers is look at some of these judicial races that are happening in your state and states close to you. See what you can do to be a part of the solution and create a confident judiciary where we know we have a shot at fairness, right? The system is corrupt. But in this instance, we can still do our part to make sure that the people who want a fair, neutral court system have some say in who these judges are.
Well, let me give you something to think about before you both leave. Number one, this is our audience. Okay, it's our audience. It's our audience. And the system has been corrupted. The system's not corrupt. System was structured just fine. It got corrupted by corrupt people who got in it. Like, the world is beautiful. We're a mess. God did not give us anything with flaws. So we're going to have to make some decisions about how we want to live here. Let's make some decisions about the America that we want. This American project is a great project. I would not live any place else in this world. Not me. No, I've been not too many. Ask me where I have not been. That's easier than for me to tell you where I have been. I don't want to live any place else. And I've had a good time in some other places overseas. Yes, I have. Oh, boy. But this is my country. We built it. I believe in it. And I believe that it can be great. It was structured to be great. And even our founding fathers and mothers, well, with the influence of the founding mothers, they created a constitution. They created a system that, that left room for correction, amendment. It left space. It left space for you to even recreate your government so that it could become what it's supposed to be. They left that kind of space. That's genius. And it's also divine. But you got to get involved. We cannot shirk our responsibilities as citizens. Otherwise, you can just go on and be a subject. If that's what you want to be. But I didn't sign up for monarchy. I'm not with that. I think, monarchies are great, but that's just not what I'm feeling. I'm a citizen of a republic. That means a whole lot to me, and it should mean a whole lot to you. So let's get with it. Let's get with the program, everybody. Let's get with the program, and let's work this system, because it will work when we work it. It will. That's what it was designed to do. So let's get with it. Get registered to vote. Let people in Georgia know that the election starts on November 28th. That's what we talked about yesterday, Reverend Dr. Uri. It starts on November 28th. Get people out to vote. That's important. More important than you know. We need every particular vote. We need every single vote. We need to add a vote in the U.S. Senate. We need that. That will put a check on Sinema and Manchin. It will enable us to do a whole lot of things that Americans need. And that's a transpartisan issue. This has nothing to do with partisanship. This has everything to do with patriotism and making this country what it's supposed to be. There's a floor beneath which no human being should fall. Nobody in America should be hungry. Nobody in America should go without health care. Nobody in America should go without the means to actualize themselves. That's the America that I want, and that's the America that we all need. And right now, I have to ride this donkey to make it happen. Now, if some Republicans want to come on over and if they all want to stay where they are and make it happen, go on and do it. Let's make America work for everybody. That's what I've signed up for. I think all forms of supremacy, Reverend Dr. Uri and Aaron, whether it's white supremacy, any kind of supremacy, I think it's all wrong. That is not what God did not make anyone superior to anybody. So I don't even want to hear that foolishness either. Let's save that. There's a song that I heard when I was growing up, Reverend Dr. Uri. Jesus included me. I'm so glad when Jesus was passing out his blessings, he included me. He said, whosoever will, let him come. Nobody gets excluded in this human family. Nobody. So let's go on and get with it, everybody. Let's get with it. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you. Reverend Dr. Uri, love you. We're going to be talking about tomorrow, this Georgia. I hope you can join us. Okay?
Indeed. Send me the info.
Aaron? Is Aaron there? Aaron has to drop it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Aaron.
Absolutely.
No, well, we need to look at, because I want you to, and what I also need you to do, we're still on Facebook. I'm going to come off shortly. I've teased you about cinema, but there are places where I think cinema can really align with Democrats. And I'd like for you to help us to understand where those spots are. But having a Senator Warnock gives us more space to push her, right? And we need that.
It does. And that's what I know she will listen to, right? We have her on stage at Mitch McConnell's institute right now because she goes where the wind blows. And if the wind from Georgia brings back Senator and Reverend Warnock, I think she'll be more apt to listen to those areas of agreement than she has been. And it's unfortunate, very disappointing for many Arizonans, but it looks like she's going to have quite the battle for her reelection, and we'll have a rough time next time. So
she's worked hard for that. She's worked hard for it. Good.
Indeed.
Yeah. She's worked hard. So go for it, sis. I ain't got no sympathy. Well, I'm sitting up here watching 1 out of 4 Americans who can't eat for Thanksgiving. No. People are not supposed to be living like that in America or any place in the world. My pastor, Reverend Clay Evans, said, I've never seen God make a mouth he couldn't feed. Okay? So all these hungry people out here, all these people struggling, No. And, you all you can put any label on it you want to. I really do not care. I just believe, what? God has given me and my family so much grace. Reverend Dr. Yeary, Aaron Connolly, in a segregated America, when I was 1 year old and my mother was pregnant with my brother Jesse, and my parents were they had just dropped off my uncle Calvin Morris. He was in seminary at Temple, and my father's fraternity brother. And they dropped them off, and they were on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and their car broke down. They called their parents and their step-parents, and nobody could give them a dime to get that car fixed. Do you hear me? A white couple who had a filling station, that's what they used to call the gas stations, filling stations, met my parents on the road, praise Jesus, and brought my parents and me and my brother, who was yet to be born, into their home for a couple of days and fixed my mom and daddy's car, fed them, gave them some food, and sent them on their way to Chicago. I've had too much grace in my life not to give it to somebody else. And you have too. And the people who are not willing to extend grace, I don't know what happened to you. But I know at some point in life, you are always going to want and need grace. So give it. And let's be about the business of making the kingdom of heaven real on earth as it is in heaven. That's what the Lord's Prayer tells you. We are but a thought away from having a great world. Nobody should be hungry. Nobody should be cold. Nobody should be starving. Nobody. Enough. Aren't you tired? Don't you want something new? Don't you want the right thing? Come on, everybody. Let's do this. I love you. I love you, Pastor Yeary. I'll see you in the morning. And I sent you a couple of articles, and I'll send you some more from yesterday. But we're going to be talking about the nuances of this race tomorrow, Aaron and Reverend Dr. Yeary. Why people must vote. And I'm going to see if I can get Daryl Jones. He's caring for a very, very gravely ill friend. Because we need to talk about how we need to vote. Because anytime people don't think that they have to, that they have yet another vote on December 6th, we got a lot of work to do, and we don't have a lot of time to do it. So I love you all. See you in the morning, Aaron.
Love you back.
Love you, Reverend Dr. Yeary. Boom.
Love you.
Here we go.
See you tomorrow.
Love you. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Morning Stars.
That's right. Your family. All right, sweetie. Love you.